Today we're going to be looking at 5 infants who disappeared. No unsolved mystery is more heartbreaking than the disappearance of an infant. It is an incredibly painful experience for a parent to bring a child into the world and only enjoy a limited amount of time with them before they go missing and are never heard from again. But in this type of case, at least there's always a decent possibility that the victim is still alive. Whenever an infant is abducted, it's often done by someone who wants to raise the child as their own, or sell the baby for the purpose of a legal adoption. The child can grow up and live a seemingly normal life without knowing that they were stolen from their real family. Number 5. Marlene Santana. On October 18, 1985, Francesca Santana gave birth to a little girl named Marlene at Brookdale Hospital in Brooklyn. 3 days later, Francesca was viewing her newborn baby in the nursery when an unidentified Hispanic-looking woman in her late 20s started a conversation with her and commented that Marlene was the prettiest baby there. Later that night, Francesca and 2 of her relatives were leaving the hospital with Marlene when she was confronted outside by this same woman, who pulled a gun on them and forced them to walk 6 blocks to a deserted junkyard. The woman ordered Francesca to hand over the baby. After the assailant pointed her gun directly at Marlene and threatened to shoot her, Francesca complied with her demand. Francesca and her relatives barely had time to react before the woman took Marlene, jumped into a nearby car driven by an accomplice, and sped away. Authorities speculated that Marlene was either sold for adoption or that the woman responsible was unable to have any children and decided to steal a baby whom she could raise as her own. Sadly, over 27 years have passed, and Marlene Santana remains missing. Number 4. Raymond Lamar Greene. Donna Greene gave birth to a son named Raymond on November 1, 1978, at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. While viewing her newborn in the nursery, Donna met an African-American woman who called herself Lisa Morris. She claimed she was there visiting her sister who had just given birth. Donna conversed with this woman on numerous occasions before being discharged from the hospital and taking Raymond home. On November the 6th, Morris made a surprise visit to Donna's apartment, claiming she wanted to see how Raymond was doing. Donna let her in to see the baby, and since her brother Tony was also there at the time, Donna felt comfortable leaving the room to take a shower for 3 minutes while Morris was visiting. However, when Donna emerged from the shower, Tony claimed that Morris had taken Raymond outside after he started crying. Donna went to look for them but was told by a neighbor that Morris had climbed into a vehicle and driven away with Raymond. After contacting the police, Donna found out the name Lisa Morris was false and that no one fitting her description had a sister who had given birth at that hospital. The woman's identity remains a mystery, and unfortunately Raymond Lamar Greene's whereabouts are still unknown. Number 3. Brian Dos Santos Gomez. In Fort Myers, Florida on December the 1st, 2006, Maria de Fatima Ramos Dos Santos was waiting at the bus stop with her 3-week-old son Brian and a female friend when a Hispanic woman pulled up in an SUV asking for directions. When Maria and her friend eventually got on the bus, the woman followed them and asked for directions again after they got off at their stop. They decided to climb into the vehicle to help the woman when they were suddenly abducted. Maria took note of the fact that the SUV already had a car seat and diaper bag inside. The woman drove them to Estero and demanded $500 before dropping Maria and her friend off and driving away with Brian. Maria and her husband are originally from a village in Brazil, and they paid human traffickers to smuggle them into the United States. It was initially suspected that Brian was abducted because her husband had fallen behind in his payments to them. However, police soon learned towards Brian's abduction being a random crime after another Fort Myers woman came forward and described a similar incident. On the day of Brian's abduction, she had been out walking with her infant grandchild when this same Hispanic woman pulled up in an SUV asking for directions. It's believed that the woman might have been looking to steal a child she could raise as her own, but neither Brian nor his abductor have ever been found. Number 2. Melissa McGinn. Rebecca and Robert McGinn lived in Trenton, New Jersey with their 7-month-old daughter Melissa and 2 roommates, one of whom was 30-year-old Wanda Faye Reed. On March 6, 1988, Wanda asked Rebecca if she could take Melissa for a walk and was given permission to do so. Wanda left and returned 8 minutes later with a neighbor, but Melissa was not with her. Wanda was mentally disabled and functioned at a level of a 4-year-old child, so she wound up giving conflicting stories about what happened to Melissa. At first, she claimed that an unidentified African-American man knocked her down and stole the baby. Wanda then said she dropped Melissa in the Delaware River before changing her story again, and claiming that the neighbor she was with had exchanged the baby for drugs. The neighbor was investigated and nothing was found to support Wanda's accusations, and her story about the Delaware River was discounted since Wanda could not have walked there and back during the 8-minute period she was away. It was speculated that Wanda might have deliberately harmed Melissa because she was jealous of the attention she had been receiving. Wanda was charged with kidnapping but was found mentally incompetent to stand trial. The charges were dropped and she was sent to live in an institution for mentally disabled individuals. Sadly, after 25 years, there are still no answers about what she did with Melissa McGinn. Number 1. Sabrina Eisenhower. In Valrico, Florida, on the morning of November 24, 1997, Marlene Eisenhower awoke to discover that her 4-month-old daughter, Sabrina, was missing from her crib. A blue and yellow blanket belonging to Sabrina also disappeared along with her. The garage door had been left open during the night. One of the doors to the Eisenhower residence was unlocked, and a blonde hair and unidentified shoe print were found near the crib. At approximately 1 a.m., a neighbor was awoken by his barking dog and believed he also heard the sound of a baby crying. While there was some evidence to suggest Sabrina had been abducted, authorities found it suspicious that neither Marlene nor her husband Steve heard an intruder entering the house during the night, and the family dog also never reacted. Controversy ensued after authorities decided to bug the Eisenhower home with listening devices, and supposedly recorded Marlene and Steve stating that their daughter was dead. The Eisenhower's were both indicted on conspiracy charges in 1999, but the recordings were not audible enough to make out their supposedly incriminating conversation. It was also discovered that investigators had lied to a judge in order to gain permission to bug the Eisenhower's residence, so the couple was eventually cleared of all charges. While the Eisenhower's have never officially been ruled out as suspects in their daughter's disappearance, there is no evidence to suggest they were responsible. Sadly, after more than 15 years, there are still no answers about what happened to Sabrina. Thank you very much for listening. That was 5 infants who have disappeared, never to be found again. Please stay tuned for the next video where we'll look at another 5 infants who have disappeared. But I've been just plain creepy. or as most people know me on the Twitterverse, JPC. And once again, I'd like to thank you for checking out this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's all free. And I shall catch you in the next video. Have a great weekend.